and welcome to our session, The State of SolarWinds UI Innovation. We're really excited about this session. This is actually another session that comes from our SWUG meetings, our SolarWinds user group meetings. And you remember, if you were with us at Dwight Camp last year, Joel was talking about investments in the area around UX and UI. You're beginning to really see the fruits of that effort with the NPM 12 release and then some of the other things that are coming later this year. And we wanted to take a minute and talk about that process because it is so driven by you, by the THWAC community. And we wanted to sort of walk through how that process works and how we got from the old interface to the new interface. So with me, of course, on the far end over there, we have Chris O'Brien. He's the product manager for NPM.
Hello.
And in the middle, Kellie Mecham. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
So my name is Kellie Mecham, and I'm with the User Experience Group. Our job is to make our products easier to use, more useful, and more efficient for our users.
Yeah, so what are we going to talk about in this session?
Today we're going to talk a little bit about how we came from the old UI to the new, when we talk about the new UI, what it is, and how you can participate in the future and make our products better for you.
Yeah, and we're also going to define what UX and UX is at SolarWinds and sort of how that process works and how it's a little bit different maybe than some other companies. And there'll be really a call to action for you guys to continue participating. And of course, there's an implied opportunity to dethrone alter egos, point totals here, but we'll kind of get into that as we go. Okay, so Kellie, let's start with what is UX? I mean, what does that mean for us at SolarWinds and just in general?
UX stands for user experience, and here at SolarWinds, it's a group of designers and researchers. Designers actually design the UI. They design the visuals, the color, the fonts, also the interactions. Researchers work with users to get feedback on what designers do so that we can do a cycle of design, get feedback from users, come back to the designers and say this is what needs changing, kind of like lather, rinse, repeat.
So you guys use the UI to sort of show your work and produce value for the customer. So what does that look like? What does that mean to you?
Let's talk a little bit in terms of the old UI and the new UI and the work we've been doing there. So let's take a look at the old UI or user interface. So starting with visual design. Patrick, I think you had a phrase you used in the past that was the UI, the old UI is a little long in the tooth.
I was reluctant to say that, but I mean, I am in front of...
It's the nicest way you can say it, really, long in the tooth.
Well, and remember, back in the day, I built all of our online demo systems, right? So I am intimately familiar with this platform. I have done horrible things to its database. I have customized the HTML behind it. So at once, I have come to really like it and defend it, but at the same time, I've watched it get a little rough around the edges, like some of the areas for contrast and just not a lot of change. And you don't want products to change for the sake of change. But we were evolving functionality and core and integration first. That's always our first focus, right? We're not going to make something pretty that doesn't do anything. We're going to start with the doing things because we're engineers. That's what we do. We're network geeks, right? But that layer of pretty was something that just wasn't prioritized as much. And so it's always been really functional, always. But in the last year or two,
it looked old. It looked old.
It needed a little update.
Let's just say it's been a very, very long time, many years, since there's been a visual update. And as always, what we do is based on user feedback. So we were getting feedback from newer users that it was a little busy, it was a little hard to focus on particular things. If we take a look right now at old Orion, what we're calling old Orion, you can see there's a lot of red on the screen. There's some heavy bars around the different resources, and it makes the data compete with the structure for the data. So that was one problem we were looking to solve. Just to make it look cleaner and more modern was another one. But navigation, that's a big one. If you look here at what we see, we've got an awful lot of tabs. I can't even count that.
An awful lot. I think is the right way
I believe we've got, is it 12? We've got 12 tabs.
Pretty much one tab per module.
One tab per module. That doesn't scale really well. Also, if you look at what this looks like if you're on a laptop, let's just bring this down to show what it looks like if you're on a laptop. You actually get 2 rows of data. And this is where you get a problem that Chris has a name for.
So try and click Overview. Network and then Overview.
Network and then Oh, wait.
Yeah. So I call this the SolarWinds mini game because what you have to do is you have to carefully navigate between the white spaces to get to the link you want. And you fail most of the time, but that's what makes it a game. You feel really happy when you get to the link you're trying to go to.
Well, and the real challenge there was that we encourage people to create custom menu or sub-menu items and custom views or summary views that really encapsulate a bunch of data in the way that they need it. And so it made that difficult because the more you added, the longer that bar got, and it's sort of exponentially more likely that you're going to drift off. So yeah.
Let's look at some other problems we had for users in terms of efficiency of navigation. So if I scroll down, and this happens to be a particularly long page, and I want to go up and see something about configs, what do I have to do? My menu's gone.
You have to scroll all the way back.
I have to scroll all the way up.
Yeah, and I can tell you right off the bat that the sort of the mental process that you're going through when you're troubleshooting a problem is you're looking at a specific set of data points. You've got some sort of conclusion in mind. That's exactly where your head is. You don't want to move that off the page to go find your navigation. It sort of takes you out of it. It's a small thing, but it's an important thing.
Also, if you look, it's pretty big. We have a lot of room for navigation. It's 109 pixels. Remember that, 109 pixels.
Okay, so that was a bunch of problems you found, but how did you really find all of the problems, quantify them, decide what you were going to fix?
That's a good question. We did lots of activities with users to get us from point A to point B. So we talked to both SolarWinds users and non-users as well. We talked to people who use other products, other competitive products, people who are in IT management, people who are new to IT to get their feedback. We talked to over 200 people as part of this process.
And that would be what we call core. When you hear us talk about core or Orion as a platform, that's what we're talking about. Okay.
So for visual, we did multiple rounds of feedback. And we actually want to show you how the UI started out, how it was in the middle, and then we're going to wait to show you the end till the end of this presentation. We want to show you about how it changed over time. So, early visual design shown to users. So we knew we had some issues that we were trying to solve with how busy the resources are and how busy the pages are. And this was an early design, what you're seeing on the screen right now, an early redesign.
So this is basically just white tabs.
Yep. Are you having a hard time seeing them?
Yeah, a little bit.
How about you?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And the resources, I mean, you're on the right path here, right? The resource boundaries are a little bit lighter, and you've desaturated the legend across the top. But yeah, I can't see the top of that at all.
So in fact, users said the same thing. Here's a few of the things they said about this design.
Shouty, felt shouty. I like that about the resource titles.
All caps felt shouty to people. We actually had more than one user say, "You're yelling at me. Stop yelling at me."
Okay, but to that point, what I love about this is that the feedback from our customers and from THWAC as a part of this is that your process invites really legitimate contacts, right? Like to say, this feels shouty to me it's not glib or snarky. It's the kind of thing that I as an engineer like to say, but you, from the UX perspective, there's feeling behind that. It's actionable. You can look at that and say, I know what they're saying here. So part of the definition and the focus on this process over the last year has been to really invite feedback that you can take and do something with, as opposed to, I just don't like that. Why don't you like that? And how would you want it to be presented?
In fact, shouty was something we could fix. We knew how to make things a little less shouty.
Right.
We also see problems with, although we were trying to make the data stand out and the background disappear, maybe we did that a little too much here. One of the feedback points we got repeatedly from users in this survey was, it's hard to tell where one resource starts and another ends. So we weren't doing a good job there with that. We've already commented on the menu. It's very hard to see.
You might have also scared them here. That's an awful lot of red, and as an admin, that just gives me the willies no matter what.
So that was interesting, but clearly we need more iteration. So what's next?
And lather, rinse, repeat is our motto in UX.
Positive feedback cycle. That's what it's a feedback loop. It's a good thing.
So this is sort of in the middle of the process design you're looking at here. So for those of you that have NPM 12, you'll notice it doesn't quite look like this. This is better, and in fact, we fixed some of those specific problems we saw on the page before. Notice a little bit about the top-level menus and contrast?
Yeah, it's a little bit better, although you do have that weird kind of flag-ish tricolor bar thing going on with the info panel right below it.
And it looks like still the mini game is there. So
the mini game's a little bit there.
But now it has
talk more about
curbs.
that. Curves. We actually increased contrast significantly on this version. We looked at font sizes and styling. And if, in fact, you notice the shouty comment, there's no shouties anymore. Enterprise dashboard, for example, is not in all caps.
Okay, you've got a background color there, so I can also feel some structure to the page as well. That's good.
That was one of the things we struggled a lot with. You want to have the design breathe, you want to have the data breathe, but you don't want it to all mush together. There needs to be some separation. So that took a little bit to find the right balance there.
Well, and also the page itself is a control. Like in this case, if you're using drag and drop, you've got to be able to grab that divider between those resources. And if it's too narrow, then now you're back to the game.
You're back to the mini game.
And so how do you, like these are problems, but how do you zone in and sort of quantify the degree to which you're solving the problem?
That's a great question. There's pretty much two ways we do that. One is survey data. We get large sample size survey from lots of people. And the other thing that many of you have participated in is UX feedback sessions. So that's one-on-one where we watch how people behave. The behavior will sometimes give us different data than survey. And we'll talk more about that in a minute as well.
And what happens when people participate?
They get thwack points.
Get thwack points.
They get a lot of thwack points sometimes. So let's take a look at how these changes impacted how people felt about the UI. We did multiple rounds of change, multiple rounds of design, feedback, lather, rinse, repeat. And in fact, at the end, one of the very last things we did before we released was we did a survey on how people felt about the changes that we had come up with. So we asked them, I think the redesigned look will make customers feel, and they had to respond one of three ways. Eager to adopt, neutral, don't care one way or another, or I'm hesitant to adopt because of the new UI, the new visual design. And in fact, you see here we've got 80% of customers about who are eager to adopt or neutral. And neutral is not a bad thing in this case. Neutral just meant the UI wasn't going to impact their ability to adopt.
Well, and it's an interesting perspective, and it also talks to the kind of shepherding behavior for members that have been a part of THWAC for a long time, because you're not posing the question, do you like this? The question is, do you think that new users will like this? Because so often, members who've been a part of the community for a really long time really do think that way. Like, if I was coming to this product for the first time, how would I want it to work? So being able to differentiate just, do you like it, to actually say, is this going to help, also plays back to an eagerness in the community to really give you those specific answers.
And in fact, we're talking to both customers and non. In this case, you can sort of interpret it both ways. I think the redesigned look will make customers feel. We didn't say new customers, we didn't say old, we just said customers. A few of the comments here are really interesting. Much more modern and refined was one of the comments we got about the design. Cleaner look, slick. Awesome layout, screens are busy but not overwhelming, looked more up-to-date in the browser. And in fact, there was one comment we got above all others, and that was an adjective, and that was sleek. We hear that still in THWAC forums. We've seen that in usability sessions. Sleek was the one word.
So is that part of the reason that the team took some time with this release? I mean, we didn't have a release of NPM for a while. I mean, obviously NetPath is a really cool new addition, and Network Insight and some of the other new technologies. But were you, part of this was the flexibility to sort of continue to solve for UI and then watch the tenor of the comments that were coming back?
Yes.
Where less words like shouty, more slick, and so you were almost, just taking the time that it taken enough cycles so that you could use those detailed comments to tell you when you were really getting there, as opposed to just like one survey.
That was part of it, and also there was a lot of work under the cover to even visually update. So there were many people involved. It wasn't just UX. We had serious commitment from UI developers, a growing group in SolarWinds, which should make some of you happy. They were very involved.
So what else are people saying about this new UI?
Well, actually, funny you should say that. This is probably my favorite quote. We asked a few users, if the new UI were a car, what kind of a car would it be? And in fact, this was a great answer we got. A Tesla. It's sleek and somewhat futuristic. It's on the cutting edge of now. Now you're on the same page as Fortune 100 companies like Google and Apple and Microsoft.
Pretty good company. Meanwhile, that totally sounds like a UX question. If our UI was a car, what car would it be?
We got some other answers, but that was my personal favorite.
It'd be an Apple car.
So for navigation, there's a lot that I can't show, a lot of one-on-one sessions with users, lather, rinse, repeat, one-on-one sessions, lather, rinse, repeat. We actually came up with not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 different builds, clear through to the build stage.
Specifically for navigation.
Specifically for navigation. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of heavy lifting. But there is a piece I can show you. Navigation change entailed 2 things. It involved changing the groupings and changing how users interact with the menu. For grouping, the first task was understanding what the menu categories should be. So we broke apart each page, every page in Orion, so alert definition, exchange summary, all those pages in Orion, and we put them in a tool and we allowed users to group those pages however they wanted, and they came up with grouping and categorization. Then, after we did that, we had another group of users walk through how they would find pages in Orion using that navigation. So imagine a kind of a research project where you look at something that looks like a node tree in Orion, and it's just first and second level navigation. And we asked users, find where you would go to do things you regularly use. And we watched how they navigated and how confident they were that they were on the right page.
And you were using control groups and different groups of users so that you didn't have a preference bias from the original group who laid out the order that they wanted to see.
Preference bias. He knows what he's talking about.
I've been doing this a long time.
Yes. We actually did activities to make sure we avoided preference bias.
I was a product manager in a former life.
After we had navigation fairly set, then we wanted to focus on the interaction. How do you mouse from first level to second level? How do we avoid the mini game?
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. That was hard. So that actually took us the 4 builds to test and to find out the right answer. So let's talk a little bit about how we came up with the answer for that. This is actually an early version of one of the navigation schemas we came up with.
I did not like this one.
I don't like the bars inside it.
That was what I
That
didn't like
really
about it.
bothers me. I don't like the bars.
And it also didn't tell me when it was scrolling off the bottom, right? Because if the bars were dark, then you didn't have the contrast, you still wouldn't know that there was more. There was no down arrow to say, hey, there's more down here.
So guess what? That's true. In fact, everything you're saying is true. But imagine that you're a user with only 2 or 3 products. Would this be so busy and so bad?
No, but you're getting ready to get to the part where you basically said that we cheated, but I think it was the right answer.
Exactly, exactly. So this actually, when we showed this to users, we actually did a survey with 200 users about this navigation, and we showed them multiple versions. And this was some of the feedback about this version. Again, going back to that eager to adopt, hesitant to adopt, neutral, I don't care one way or another. This navigation didn't test so well.
31% hesitant. That's more than that are eager. It would be an improvement to not do this.
Of course, if you're being positive, you can say that between the neutral and the eager, you're looking at 69%.
Okay, that's not how I slice it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard problem. You know, we still don't have, we have 2/3 of the people that are happy and 1/3 that aren't. That's not a good enough ratio. So let's take a look at another design. So this was another option we looked at. You can see that it actually takes up less space on the page for navigation. And also, if you notice one difference between this and the other version, actually, Patrick, what do you notice?
Well, this one's actually, what would have been the tabs across the top are running down the side, and it also gives me a lot more room, to my point earlier, of encouraging people to create custom views and pages and menu links. It makes it really easy to have a lot.
Anything else? Do you notice
The
anything?
mini game is gone.
The mini game
I'm
is
very
gone.
pleased about.
And it's collapsed way, way smaller across.
Way smaller. There's no menu. There's stupid scroll bars.
No stupid scroll bar.
And the contrast is nice. Like it's easy to know what is my top level from my second level nav here with that gradient in the background. There's a console aspect to this, and I don't think anyone has ever said it out loud, but I like the fact, I mean, I do like a nice green screen, and there's something that feels homey about this to me. It feels like I'm kind of at the core, I'm starting from the beginning, and all the rest of this is the output as a result of that and the decisions that I make, but I always feel like I've landed on home whenever the menu is expanded.
So one thing that isn't as good about this design actually is you're only seeing tertiary navigation for one item. So you're only seeing network. Sometimes for some people it's nice to see.
Network? What more do you need? It's all about network.
Alter Ego would disagree with that. So let's take a look at the surveys. Yeah, let's take a look.
Definitely better. Hesitant, 6%, definitely better.
Significantly better. Only 6% hesitant. So this tested very, very well. So let's take a look live and show you what they look like in the real world in the Orion demo. So let's talk about navigation first. What changes did we make? And let's look at them in the real world. Navigation. No more mini game. Not possible anymore. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, not super fun anyway. So the cool thing I also see here is, so obviously we iterated and now we have what looks like that other option, that second option that people were happy with. That's very cool.
You also push the contrast a little bit more for the secondary menu.
In fact, contrast continued to evolve over time. That's true. We also have task-based menus. Look, what are some of the most common things people do in Orion? They look at alerts, they look at reports, and they go to settings. Can you guess what the number one setting is?
No.
Polars.
No.
What?
Manage nodes.
Of course it's managed. Oh, I should have known that. I'm
You didn't know that?
I'm embarrassed.
You should be embarrassed. Look, it's right front and center. You don't have to go to all settings to get to manage nodes. So we are trying to bring commonly used functionality up to the top across the board.
Yet it certainly feels right that alerts is one click away from here. You don't have to go like through settings or through a mini game to reach alerts.
I would imagine if you buy a monitoring product, you're buying it for alerting.
That's true.
So the navigation is task-based. Also, if you look here, you're one click away from your product-based navigation.
But to my point earlier, you also gave us the ability to cheat.
Yes. In fact, what we found from observing users as opposed to survey data was that for users with 3 or fewer products, there were some advantages to this version. This is what we call the expanded version, and you have the option to go between expand and collapse anytime you want. But for users with 3 or few products, so imagine it cuts off right here, there's some advantage to seeing all the navigation at once and being able to go between.
What if different users prefer a different expand or collapse version?
They can choose what they want as long as they don't share login.
So it's persisted to the database by user ID.
Okay.
So if you share login, if you have Orion admins and 3 of you share one login, you're going to be fighting.
But if you
a new mini game.
Yeah, but there is no license fee for having more users. You should not have people sharing logins for a variety of reasons, this being one of them, to be able to customize views. But the main thing is to go look at activity logs, to be able to look at who's closing and adding notes and all the rest of it.
Audit logs, yeah, very important.
Create enough accounts for everybody to use the system and have their own account, because there's no extra licensing involved in that.
You just mentioned something really interesting. You said custom views. So one question we heard a lot about during feedback sessions was, what happens to things that I create, views I create for my users? And in fact, they're still going to be there. You're not going to lose those custom views. They're going to be in this area right here. So you're not going to lose them.
And in the database, it looks the same. Like for people who do a lot of customization for custom views, and the relationship between menu item, tab bar, the rest of it, the database is all still the same. This is just a different presentation of that same data. So they're not losing their customizations.
Yeah, and we're really excited about this new UI. So we talk, in our heads, there's so many different components of it, but sometimes that's a little bit overwhelming. So how I like to simplify this is functionally, there's really only 2 things. Functionally, there's a new menu, which is what we've spent a lot of time talking about here, and we've also got a reskin down below. So that changes a little bit of the coloring, but your cheese hasn't moved in terms of the content area of the page. The cheese is still there, it's just a slightly different color. So it's really new menu, functionally new menu, and reskin.
So if you interact with a chart or a page, or you are creating custom views, the way you do those tasks does not change at all.
Well, there's also a lot, to go back to your cheese metaphor, there's also less rind here, right? So this isn't a great example, because this is actually the online demo server. So up here in the right-hand corner, you've got a download button. I can't imagine why you would have a download button on something. But that gray bar across the top here is actually an artifact of the demo.
Yep.
How many pixels? So all the menu has been shrunk down to now is this black bar right here. How many pixels is that?
40 pixels.
So 109?
109 before, 40 after. It's pretty good.
40 after. And there's something I want to see a little bit lower down here on this page.
Oh, do you want to look and see what happens to menus?
Wait, I can jump right back up there without losing my spot?
For those of you with very long pages, in fact, it's true, you now have frozen navigation at the top. So if you're scrolling way down a long page and you want to see something in SAM, you just go right to it.
And since you're thinking now conceptually about a task, that makes it easier because you are switching tasks. If you're in a no detail view, and then all of a sudden you say, I'm wondering how that application's going, or you want to go to a view with an app stack view, where you're thinking maybe there's an application that's affected by something on the network side, you are now changing tasks, and so that task focus is to also enable that.
Yep. Notice this thing over here too. You guys commented earlier about the tri-state of the banding in one of the middle designs I showed. What is it, Patrick?
That's the notification window.
As if you know what you're talking about.
In fact, notifications aren't taking up a whole extra bar of room on their own anymore. You can see how many you have without it popping up underneath as a band.
Now, you do get a scroll bar if that's too long. Yeah. You're not going to have to scroll off the page to get to that. It's aware it's aware of the bottom of the browser.
Correct.
Okay, so when you're talking about UI and redesign and streamlining, it's easy to think about the menu bar. It's easy to think about overall contrast, icons, navigation, organization. These are all things that you're getting feedback from users that are very specific. I wish that. I wish that when the page scrolled to the bottom, I didn't lose my nav. But there are a lot of things that they might not talk about unless asked, where they spend a lot of time but you don't think about it. Like, you have to navigate through settings to make system changes, right? So investing in something like the settings page isn't necessarily an obvious chunk of time, but it really pays off for users because that's a big part of what we interact with.
And that's a cleanup thing. Let's take a look at what it looked like before and what it looks like now. This is actually kind of a startling change on this page, so it's kind of good to show this. If you look at the old UI here, you see big gray on one whole side of the page. The icons are kind of big and chunky, they're 3D. You have a lot of wrapping of text also. And over here, on this side, we see the new UI.
Yeah, just the sections are the first thing that jump out at me. You have a getting started section, whereas before it had that sort of really small divider, so the sections didn't feel as defined in the old UI.
So what do you notice that's different?
Well, there's also just a general cleanup. I mean, if you think about, and this may just be because I have worked with the HTML here, when you look at things like, for those of you who play with .NET, ASP.NET, there's a page master and the subcontrols, there's some general cleanup here that's been really beneficial. Like up here at the top, there's this kind of line, the gray bar across the top.
What is that gray bar for? Oh, that's where the views show up under each tab.
Right.
But views don't show up. That's weird.
Settings.
Right, so that was eliminated. So you're exactly at that point, is that a lot of things where that would have been probably a div, which is where the sub items would have popped up, are completely eliminated. And we also went back and looked at a lot of the other controls and just looked at how dense they were, or looked at opportunities to clean them up, so that instead of having that bar, the administration broken out as a sub-item of these with the little lines in between, you've carried over that gray background that you're using as a common divider visual language with the resources from the other pages into here as well. Instead of having a different type of navigation, it's a similar navigation. So your eye is in the habit of seeing it the same way.
I noticed the icons are flatter and, to me, more modern. I also noticed the good separation between the sections of the page. And text isn't wrapping in weird places. Look at how SolarWinds products work together in this version and this version. They're pretty different. It's easier to scan. If you look at scanning a page for content, it's a little easier to scan and find what you need in the new version also.
So what's next? What do you want to look at next?
Well, you know what I'd like to do right now? I would like to see NetPath, the first product built on the new UI.
I love showing NetPath, so go ahead and pop on over.
Wait, before you do that, remember, we have filled the air with product demos for NetPath. That is not what we're doing. We're just talking about UI. There have been 2 webinars that you can go check out. We've had 2 lab episodes. There's a
THWAC camp session.
There's a THWAC camp session on it. So what we're really talking about here is just a difference in the UI that's exposed through the development for NetPath.
Yep, so jump on over. We'll take a look at what that looks like. So this is NetPath, and as you can see, this looks different from all the other pages in Orion. So what's really cool to me as a product manager is this new UI, these underpinnings of new UI gives us all this new technology to produce new visualizations and whatever the best visualization is to help the user solve a problem. So really exciting to me, lots of difference in this functionality. It's really interactive, so when you select something in the bottom right hand of the screen, that can change the whole screen, and really excited about this functionality. So this is brand new functionality, right? NetPath is brand new, but we also have all of our existing functionality that people know and love. And what's cool is we made the brand new UI and the underpinnings of this new technology stylistically look nearly identical to the existing UI. So we've got this sort of reskinned new menu bar UI, and then we've also got this new technology powering NetPath. They both look the same. So as any IT guy knows, it's really important to be able to produce incremental value where the thing as a whole, the network or our UI, works at each step along the way. That's how you make careful progress and evolve anything, whether it's a network or a product. So it's really cool that both of the brand new technology and the sort of existing functionality stylistically look the same. When we produce new functionality, it can use all this new tech. When we take a look at our old functionality, we can slowly migrate to the new technology as well.
And there's a precedent for this. We've done this a couple times before, and probably the largest one was as we went to the Swiss infrastructure. We actually went to N-tier and started moving where the years ago version of the UI was bolted directly to SQL Server. It started using the information services, and for those of you with multiple products, you'll notice there's a couple of different services that are providing data to the database, or in the case of NetFlow, they're actually going out to the FastBits engine or whatever else, so that when we're making changes, it's easier on the UI. But it took us a while to get there. We spent a couple of years migrating, and probably 3 major releases, migrating from the original direct to the database version to now where it's all abstracted through business layers on port 17777. So this is actually another example of that, where it allows us to migrate to an entirely new, in this case, web technology for the new UI without disrupting everything and sort of betting the whole farm on one big release and possibly causing issues for customers.
Yeah, we need customers to be able to consume it at the rate that we're creating the new functionality and the new experience. So you can also use this as kind of a sneak peek of some of the stuff to come. Like you've got a live mode button on this page, so you can pause refreshes, but if you have live mode on, content is pulled into the page as necessary without a full page refresh.
Right.
Sounds kind of interesting.
Is that part of your Wicked initiative, Wicked Fast?
So yeah, we're not ready to talk about that anymore. Thank you, Kelly. But we're very excited about where this is going to go.
Well, we have some customers that are really sharp when it comes to web design, right? And there have been some recommendations in part of the UX process of like frameworks that we ought to adopt that are not only provide better performance, to your point, but also make it easier for us to create new features rather than dragging some of the older code along. And so before, in the old interface, each resource sort of was responsible for its own changes, right? But here, we can now inherit a lot of things. So like, I know it seems like a simple thing, but here's this list of NetPath services, right? And you came over in your first demo and you clicked on Salesforce, and it expanded this item. That is not special code that we had to write. That's something we inherit from the new user interface technology that makes it easier to do these cleaner designs and, to your point, of being able to pull in new user suggestions faster.
Yep.
And for those of you who are curious, when am I on the new user interface and when am I not, I'll pull out this out of full screen so that you can see it. And the way you can tell is you just look up here at the URL. And normally you would see the name of your host /Orion/ in the path. And here you'll notice that it says /UI at the root. So that tells you which one of those technologies it's using. And the point that I wanted to make there is you will see the word Orion start to disappear over time in the URL. That does not mean that Orion, the platform that all of this sits on, is going away. It is still the same platform. But in this case, just the web engine itself will cause a little bit of a change in the URL, but it is still the same platform.
Inside baseball.
So a lot of progress here and a lot driven by users. So if users out there want to get involved and drive some more changes, how would they do that?
Actually, there's several ways to do it. One of the best is to go on Thwack and go to blogs and groups, user experience.
I don't remember that being there.
It's been sort of hidden and it's been there for a while, but now we're kind of rising to the top.
And the forum's been there a long time. This discussion goes back for years, but you're just surfacing that and making it easier for everybody to get involved.
And we want everybody to get involved. User experience never ends. Just because we get features and functionality out there in the wild does not mean we're done collecting feedback. We actually want to know, for example, how the UI changes are impacting you out in the wild once you upgrade. What do you like? What's not working for you? What do we still need to work on? For example, Silverback says if you're out there, hello, you have a really good suggestion somewhere on Thwack for new menu ideas. So if anyone wants to go look and see what he has to say, it's an interesting feature request. You can get involved by clicking on Be Our Usability Buddy, which will actually take you to a sign-up form.
So what's a Usability Buddy?
We used to have t-shirts back in the day, and that was our original UX t-shirt for feedback. We didn't used to even be able to give out points initially. Initially, it was t-shirts. And we had Usability Buddy t-shirts. So if anybody has one, it's sort of a classic.
Yeah, but now they get usability points.
Now they get both. T-shirts and points. So when you sign up to participate in UX feedback sessions, one thing to keep in mind, and we can't see it on this form, is the very last question you get asked is open-ended. What are you most interested in giving feedback on? Do you have feedback on alerts? Do you have feedback as a multi-product user or a new user or a large customer or a customer interested in us developing a particular feature? Let us know. We actually earmark that and we will come back to you when we're ready.
And that was one of the things that was a part of this process over this last year that you really seemed to spend a lot of time on, is that we're engaging users and we're trying to make that time as effective as possible for them. And I certainly have areas of our products that I am more passionate about than others or have more opinions about. And so that was one of those first questions you asked was, how do you want to provide feedback? And some of that early kind of meta feedback was, I really care about this, and I want to find a quick way to get myself included in a group where you don't talk to me about anything else.
Yes.
But this is so you're not wasting my time, and when you come to me, it's something that's going to be really interesting. And you're doing some really cool things. Like it might not even be an alpha or a fully baked UI or an example. You will sometimes do just wireframe or sketch sessions, where you'll just show them something. It's like, we don't even know if we're going to build this or not.
That's not infrequent. We actually are just wrapping something up this week that has to do with documentation and involves some ideas that we may or may not pursue.
Let's pursue them. But no, I've seen you have calls sometimes where sometimes it's you're into a beta or an alpha and you're really getting to detailed design, and that call may go on for a while, but I've seen some of them that are 5 minutes. You're like, hey, we've talked to you about these things in the past. Let me just show you this right quick and get some quick feedback. So getting involved in this is not a huge commitment of time. It's easy to say, this is where I want to contribute, this is how I want to help, and then when that engagement happens, it's really efficient.
Yeah, to the level that the user needs. Like for NetPath specifically, NetPath deals with the challenge of figuring out people's network environments and the internet. So we had to do a whole lot of testing for that. And so I think NetPath did more alpha and beta work than any of our other products. And really UX was critical for that, and our users was critical for that.
Lots more coming up.
Okay, so I did tease it at the beginning, and we're about to wrap up here. And it's not just a huge plug for getting people to, threaten's not the right word.
Oh, come on, let's just unseat alter ego. Let's just unseat alter ego.
But there are other reasons besides creating better product for getting involved, which is you've also modified the rewards for being involved. So it used to be the only way to get a lot of points was to do a beta. But now, the UX process itself, without even needing to install anything, it's possible to get several thousand points if you're involved in UX and beta. I mean, I think the most that I've seen anyone get through one release was, almost 6,000 points? It was a lot.
There was one special circumstance where somebody got 6,000 points.
But that was someone engaged and really passionate with some great ideas, right? So
he had a dev environment and he had to install So many things.
But you've had a lot of people that have been 2,000, 3,000
Yeah,
points.
just a
with little bit of
conversation will
time,
get you
right?
some points. Yeah.
So definitely get involved in this process. When you look at NPM 12 and the changes and like just between these two releases that we went through here, this is all the result of this huge focus on user improvement that we started talking about at Thwack Camp last year. I am so glad that we had this conversation. Again, if you have a chance to come to one of our user groups, you should, because this is the kind of thing that we talk about. But thank you both so much for coming to Thwack Camp with this session and walking us through this.
Thank you, and sign up for UX feedback sessions, please.